Welcome to Spiritual Happy Hour. What's in your drink? Oh, wait. What's in your drink?
I'm not drinking anything.
Maybe that's the problem.
Maybe.
So before we get started, I just want to thank the amazing Master Randy Luna for the music that he brings to Spiritual Happy Hour. Isn't he just wonderful?
He is amazing.
And the other person that you don't get to see here with us very often is Carl Phenologist Fink, who is our director and behind the cameras, and he makes this all possible. We are so grateful for that guy.
And we are so grateful for you.
Oh, thank you.
The joy.
Well, thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. You caught me speechless.
That doesn't happen very often.
So, what have you been thinking about lately?
Well, I have been thinking about what my spiritual happy hour is, and the only thing that I could come up with is divine order and then an expletive.
Can you do that without getting struck by lightning?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I've been saying
is that kind of like the spiritual 2x4?
I've been saying that a lot. Divine order. Bullshit. We need sound effects there, I think.
I think Randy can get on that one.
I think so. But, I've been thinking, what is divine order anyway? And how can that be? And I kept coming back to a story from, my previous lifetime in this lifetime that I've never, ever told. And every time I think of this spiritual happy hour, that story comes up. So
you never even told me?
I
thought I heard all your stories.
I don't think I have ever told you. And if you're willing to listen, I'm going to tell you and you and you and you and anyone else who wants to hear. Because I've been thinking a lot about divine order and what it actually means. And I know we're to trust in divine order. And I know that it's a process. And I know that sometimes it seems difficult. I know that with all the challenges going on in the world and thinking about, what the hell is happening? How can horrendous things like war be a part of divine order? Well, let me tell you a story about a time in my life when I really didn't know what divine order was. I really didn't think about it at all. I was working, struggling, living in Kansas City with a 4-year-old wonderful little boy. I was a single parent, divorced after 3 years, worked 2 jobs at a time. I read an article in some magazine somewhere that said, if you're single for 5 years or more, the chances of you ever getting married are next to none. I thought, oh my gosh. I have no idea where the article came from, but it kept playing over and over and over in my mind. Anyway, through this struggle, I dated a few people, very few. And then one, when my son was 2 years old, really stood out amongst the others. I remember when I met him the very first time. He was in my apartment for 17 minutes. A friend brought him over for me to meet him. Everything in my body went off. There was an immediate chemical reaction. I was definitely drawn to this guy in some unexplained way. We dated a few months. It was during the disco era. You remember the disco era? Well, some of you may. My goodness, we could dance. First of all, we were like 2 miniature people. He was 5'4", I was almost 5 foot. And yet, in disco, we could clear a dance floor. Once we went to a club about 60 miles away, and we'd heard that they videotaped some of the dancers, and you guessed it, next time we went there, we were actually on the television screens all around the dance floor dancing. It was so cool. Well, we dated for 6 months or so, and then all of a sudden, he was gone. Gone. He didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. He was just gone. Now, skip forward 2 years. Okay? Are you following me? 2 years later, I had moved from Parsons, Kansas to Kansas City and was aching for a sweetheart, a boyfriend, someone who would help me and my son survive. I mean, I really wanted to get married. I wanted to get married before the 5-year mark, from that article. I attended a local church, not a New Thought church, but Community Christian Church near the plaza in Kansas City. It was a beautiful church. I didn't attend very regularly, but that day that I went, the subject was prayer and how God answered prayers. So, as lonely as I was, with 2 jobs, not really any friends to speak of, even at church, I didn't get involved at all, I started praying. I started praying for a husband. I look back at that time and I have to chuckle. I was so naive. You can't yearn for something like that to happen. It doesn't do that. It doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. Yearning assumes that it's not already in your field. Anyway, I know that now. I didn't know that then. I started dreaming about someone and about being in relationship with someone. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't channeling. I wasn't metaphysical. I didn't believe in any of that stuff that I am doing now. I was young and lonely for adult company beyond my little boy. I dreamed about this man. I couldn't quite see all of his face, but I dreamed about him. And yet, in my dreams, we seemed to be in love. I prayed and prayed for him to enter my world. One day, I was particularly lonely, and after my son went to bed, I was praying for my husband to come to me. And within 10 minutes, this guy who I had dated before 2 years earlier and danced the disco with 2 years before called me out of the blue. A direct answer to my prayers? Right. If I knew what divine order was at that time, I would have thought, whew, divine order. We got together the next night. We talked all night long. We had never really been intimate together, but we just talked and danced and talked and played, and we talked that night all night long. I will always remember that at 5 a.m., my son got out of bed because he heard us laughing and talking, and he recognized this man. When he left before, my son was only 2 years old, but he recognized him. Again, divine order? Well, 30 days later, we were married. An answer to my prayers. It was maybe the last impulsive thing I have ever done. After we were married, I realized he was probably manic depressive. He had very highs, very lows emotionally. I don't need to go into all the details. We just moved several times. He was a licensed mental health therapist in group homes and hospitals for at-risk children or the mentally disabled. 5 years later, I discovered that he had been molesting my son for 2 years. Oh yes, there were signs, there were problems, but I was made to feel that somehow those problems were all my fault. I don't have to get into all that now. My point is, when I found out, I took immediate action. I took my son and left. He was 9 years old at the time. We went through the whole court system, the hearings, the divorce, the detectives. The first time I ever heard the whole story of the molestation was when my son told the detective when and how it had happened. I was shocked. The police went to arrest him, but he had checked himself into a mental institution in Rolla, Missouri. And I learned that you can't arrest someone that's in a mental institution. He had cleared out our checking accounts. I mean, I had to move all of our furniture and stuff out of the house. Otherwise, I would lose the furniture because I couldn't pay the rent. I had nothing. I think I was making like $5 or $6 an hour managing a bookstore. Needless to say, I continued on. I actually prosecuted him for child abuse. Finally, there was a hearing. The attorney convinced me not to go through a whole trial because my son would have to testify in court with his abuser there staring right at him. He was up for 37 years. He got 7 and was out in less than 3 for good behavior. I'm telling you this because sometimes it's really difficult to believe in divine order. Sometimes it's really challenging to think that in the middle of wicked things that are done by others, they can still be a part of some divine plan. What happened after that? Well, we both, my son and I, got 4 to 5 years of free counseling. Within the next 7 to 8 years, we tried to move on with our life. I went on several public radio shows, a few television shows, with my identity blocked, of course, speaking out proactively to protect victims of violent crimes. I was actually a speaker in the legislature for the legislative decision to change the federal laws about having pedophiles register so the government and their neighbors can keep track of them. And I was also a part of the program that stopped having the child being required to testify in court with the abuser right there. Now they can testify in a private protected room on video. I wrote 3 plays that raise money for victims of violent crimes. I don't know how much has been raised in Southwest Missouri, but it's a lot. I realized that good comes from everything. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, it was challenging. When my son was growing up, we had nothing. Because all that furniture that I got out of the house, I sold. Everything that he touched for like $300. So somebody would say, "Here, I'll give you $50. And I'll say, take it for 10. The only reason I didn't murder him was because I knew that then I would go to jail. And that was one of the threats that he told my son would happen if he ever told anyone what he was doing. Divine order? Yes, it was still in place. Good comes from everything? Absolutely. I was a victim at first. My son was a victim at first. For a long time, I lived by the words from the Bible, "Revenge is mine, saith the Lord." I was hurt, I was angry, and I didn't really trust anyone anymore. I dated a few people, but needless to say, I did not pray for a relationship. When I woke up, or when I experienced a soul transformation 8 years later, I realized that yes, good does come from everything. And divine order, no matter how hard it might seem at the time, is still a part of the divine that is truly within us. I looked back at all the counseling and all the ministers that I had talked to, and the one thing that was left out or somehow I missed was forgiveness. Yes, forgiveness. You see, somehow, myself and my son created that situation. This was one of those things that we needed to learn in order to evolve. I'm not a victim. I would not be who I am today had that not happened, and neither would my son. I learned that I had to forgive my second husband, and really, more importantly, I had to forgive myself for creating that. I was a victim of my own guilt and self-blame for several years. Every once in a while, the old energy still pops up just to see if I can still forgive and pray for his happiness. I went through all the forgiveness exercises, writing 1,000 times, I forgive. I'm changing his name just in case you need to know that. I forgive John Doe. I forgive John Doe. I forgive John Doe. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Yet my cells were simply not buying it. There was still this underlying anger, this vengeful feeling of victim energy that I really couldn't shake. Then someone told me about a book. I'm not even sure what the name of that book was. It was something about super consciousness. Anyway, in the book it said, yes, you have to forgive everyone of everything, no matter how awful the situation was, and you have to forgive yourself above all, because you chose to create that situation. It was hard to swallow. Then this book said something that I had not heard yet. It said, you don't have to forgive with all the affirmations, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. You just have to be willing to forgive, and then you can move on. That was a turning point in my belief in divine order. I started repeating 1,000 times a day, I am willing to forgive myself for choosing to marry a pedophile. I am willing to forgive myself for putting my son in that situation. I am willing to forgive John Doe. I am willing to forgive John Doe. I am willing to forgive John Doe and recognize that he was a victim of his circumstances growing up, and that is what he knew. I am willing to forgive. And then one day, I realized that awful, sickening victim feeling had lifted. Lifted. I saw all the good that came from that trauma. I learned that some of my ancestors, some of my relatives that I knew had been molested by priests, by family members, by ministers, by neighbors. And that molestation chain stopped with me and my son, at least in my family. I realized that I helped raise thousands of dollars to help people like me and my son. I realized that the laws were changed in the country, and I had helped. In the work I do now, energetically, I can spot someone who is molested and help them through that old trauma. I realized that I was not a victim, but I was given a task. I created my life path in order to fulfill that task, to help others heal from their childhood traumas. Now, how does this pertain to your world, your life, and the state of the world right now? There are horrible, terrible atrocities going on in the world. Crimes against not just women and children, but humans. One angry group against another. Innocent people on all sides getting hurt, maimed, tortured, killed. Yet I still believe that somehow divine order is in process. I still believe that we are only a victim if we choose to be a victim. On a global scale, Forgiveness is the key. I am willing to forgive. What happened to me? What happened to my son? There was nothing. That was nothing in comparison with the barbarity of war, of terrorism, of the horrendous things that millions of innocent people go through every day. Yet people, humans, can still rise above the manure of their neighboring countries to return to the strength of who they truly are. It's not being afraid or being a victim to any situation. It's finding solutions with compassion that gives me hope. I have been a student of A Course in Miracles now for, 6 years, 7 years. I read it daily. And sometimes I don't understand the message. I just know that the premise goes into my energy field and into my beliefs. There are at least 162 out of 365 lessons, probably more, where Yeshua, Jesus, says, I am as God created me. And that doesn't mean I am as God created me with only the good stuff in my life. That means that I have the tools to realize that as God created me, I am acting as God within me. I've created some wonderful opportunities to experience growth, change, and the compelling awareness that I get to forgive continuously and learn from the battles within myself and my fellow humans. Yes, divine order is sometimes really difficult to handle. Yet even in the darkest of times, humans are very resilient. This is a message I received from a dear friend in October, 3 days after the most recent altercation in the Middle East. She was 18 miles, 30 kilometers from the worst fighting in that war. She said, I know in my heart that it is part of the world changing, and I keep joining my love and prayers to be a constant stream of love surrounding this broken planet. I have faith that the world is rising from the ashes of all the disasters. Our part, as sad and hard as it is to help change the old vibration to a new, more loving, coherent one. I just love and imagine better solutions for all. If she and her family, having lost several friends and relatives already in just 3 days, if she can hold the faith and resolution, so can we all. Trauma, war, violence in our past? Divine order. It is to help us grow in our strength and courage. War, violence in our presence? Yes. Divine order as we create a better world. We are not victims. We are divine creators. Let us hold that space for the divine order of the world with love and compassion as we listen to the Master Randy Luna's original music and then a message from Adironda and the Council of Light. So it is good day to you, huh? Good day to you, good day to you, good day to you. Good day to each of you. There you are. Yes. As you understand, each of you are right here with us. We know you may be sitting in your living room or your car or somewhere else, but we feel your energy right here present with us because it's all just energy, as are you. And it is all divine, as are you. That is why when our vessel Marilyn started thinking about this particular spiritual happy hour, we said she has to come clean. Not by showering, but by really telling you some of her trauma, some of her belief, and how she has come round to divine order. To understand that no matter how she created a horrendous situation, no matter how awful you are creating this awful, horrible situation, it is still a part of a bigger picture. It is still a part of a new set, setting the world anew, uncovering a dimension that has not been experienced in this capacity before, opening up an avenue of divine transformation. That is what this is about. The repeating of history. It needs to stop once and for all. Dearly beloveds, my beloved friends, when I walked with you, the world was much smaller. I know, it was still the same size, but you didn't have the media, the internet, TikTok. A way that something can happen on one side of the world, and you know it within seconds on the other. We didn't have the weaponry that you have now. We didn't have the words to describe them that you have now. But that doesn't make it any better or any worse. I ask you, keep your faith. Keep your trust in humanity. That despite the wars happening in multiple places on your wonderful Mother Gaia, people are still at their core, at their essence, love. I ask you to hold the faith and to know that this world, your world, is experiencing something new. Something expanded over what has been before. It is time for you to step up to the plate, to step forward, and remind those what love is. Love is all there is. Love heals all. God, Father, is a part of you and me. Our teacher, our instructor. You are still the one who makes the choice, because free will is possible. Understand and know that your prayers make a difference. As you pray, so will I. As you pray, people all over the world will also pray. And that has the capability to shift the collective consciousness on this planet. Do not buy into the pain, but to heal it with love. Love does conquer all. Please, love with me and pray for the willingness to forgive. I am willing to forgive my persecutors. I am willing to forgive those who killed my family. I am willing to forgive those who tortured my friends. I am willing to forgive that which I have created. I am willing to teach love forever. Toda. 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 Whew. Well, now you've heard it from the Master. Trust that faith, dearest. Believe in that faith. We love you. We love each and every one of you, whether you watch this video or not. We are you because we see you in the heart. Namaste.